The thing that came to mind is that self-discipline is the answer. The thing that is missing isn't that we don't know the right way to do something. It's that we just won't require of ourselves that we do it. So I think self-discipline is the answer.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. Today we have with us an incredible leader that is changing this world for a better place through his organization. Ron, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, David. I'm glad to be here.
Ron, for the audience, can you please tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
Okay. Well, my name is Ron Farmer, and I live in Houston, Texas, and I'm the CEO of US LED. It's a LED lighting company for commercial and industrial lighting.
US LED. Wow. Did you found this company, Ron?
I did in 2001, 22 years ago.
Wow. You know, I'm beginning to see a pattern, with all my podcast guests, all of them have been in business for 15 years or longer. And most of them have. And it's just incredible because, as you know, most businesses go out of business within 2 years, right?
Yeah. Very high percentage.
It's not easy. Myself, I've been in business 18 years, but I just cannot believe how successful some people become in their enterprises.
Well,
Ron, how did you get into this line of business? I mean, LED lights, they're fairly new. I remember before the LED world, it was all bulbs and they were horrible and they will spend a lot of energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I owned another company called US Signs. It was a national level sign company. We did a lot of business in Canada as well, by the way. Quite a bit of business, but in any case, had a need, and the need was fulfilled by LED lighting. And so I started buying lighting from another LED lighting company way back in 1999 and 2000. Their product started to fail, and when it started to fail, they didn't seem to know what to do about it. And so I needed to solve my problem. And so I solved my problem by developing a product that would do what theirs was supposed to be doing. And it cost me a lot more money than I expected it was going to. And so I went ahead and did what I was kind of halfway planning anyway. And I just started a company around the product. And I sold it only to my company for about the first 8 months because I wanted to make sure I'd made a good product. And I didn't want to, have anybody else have the product. And then after that, it just worked perfectly. We did 135 locations for, I think it was AMC Theater, if I'm not mistaken. And once we had done that, that was proof. And I went on about my business and started selling the product. And the rest is history, as they say.
Wow. So a big problem turned out into a new business opportunity.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So this is how we entrepreneurs differentiate ourselves from the rest of the world, right? Like we have this mindset where instead of looking at a problem, you look at a possible solution that will actually get you better. Isn't that something, eh?
Yeah. Some people go out and get a job, and other people start companies.
Exactly. Yes. Ron, so you started a sign business first. Was that your first business, a sign business?
No, not really. I had several small businesses, but it was the first one to scale. And I started that one in 1980 in Houston, and we kept that one for 31 years and sold it after 31 years. I started this company 10 years before I sold that company, though. And this company was just more exciting and more fun. And so when the CEO of that company started to cause problems, is a polite way of putting it. I didn't want to go solve the problem, so I just sold the company and moved on.
That is amazing. I mean, 31 years and you sold it, and then this one is over 22 years. It's like you started running companies when you were 12 years old or something?
Well, I'm 77 years old now, so.
Wow. You sure look like 65.
Whatever.
Ron, let's look back in time. I think you have a wealth of information. Where were you in the last day of high school? Like, what was in your mind? Did you want to go to college or you wanted to go into business right away? What was there?
Well, my dad had a company. It was a sawmill, and I loved working there. And frankly, if it hadn't been for the Vietnam War, I would have gotten out of high school and gone to work for his company and eventually taken it over and continued about my business. I suspect that's what I would have done. But because the Vietnam War was on, I went to college, and in my junior year, I got drafted out of college. So I was in the Army for a year, and then I came back and I took over his mill. And I was 22 at the time. I took over his mill. I took it over in the sense of he didn't need to come to work anymore because I was running the mill. And so he went to Mexico, and I continued to run the mill until I shut it down later.
So he retired?
What's that?
He retired?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. It wasn't retirement. It was just I didn't need him at the mill anymore, and so my dad already had some interest in Mexico, and so he went down there to start a duplicate business to what we had in the United States. We lost our contract shortly after that. I was able to get another contract with another company that only lasted a few months, and then I shut the mill down on my 24th birthday, September 16th of 1970. 1970. Yeah, 1970.
That must have been scary. Like you shot, so you basically you went out of business, and what happened? Like what was in your life? Because that was your only source of income, I guess, right?
It wasn't. It's funny. I don't know why, but I wasn't the least bit afraid. It didn't even occur to me to be afraid. I simply shut the mill down because it started losing money, and so it wasn't worth my while to continue. And then I went to Mexico thinking I was going to go down there and help my dad, start a duplicate business just like the one we were running. But we could produce the product so much cheaper down there, we could actually make money. In the United States, we couldn't make money because the contract was too tight. And a lot I could say about that business, but suffice to say, I got to Mexico, found out my dad was really more or less on an extended vacation, and we just were not going to, it was never going to work. I mean, within a month, I knew it wasn't going to work. And the trouble, well, I shouldn't say the trouble, but the challenge was that I'd already met my wife, and it was one of those things where I met her, and I went home that day and told my dad, I think I've met the woman I'm going to marry, that same day. And so I couldn't go home until I determined whether or not I should do that. And actually marry her. And so 3 months and 3 weeks after our first date, we got married, and I came home to the United States.
Wow. So you got married in Mexico?
Yeah, I got married in Mexico. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And
so you went to Mexico to continue a business, and you ended up finding your soulmate.
Yeah, exactly. So we've been married for 52 years now, she and I. And we have two children, and they each have 2 children. And one of those children has a child. So I'm a great grandfather right now.
Congratulations. Life, I'm a man of faith, so I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that God has, preordained our life. And when you tell stories like this, it just grows my faith,
Yep. Let me tell you, David, a friend of mine it was 10 years ago this Christmas, a friend of mine said, "You keep telling me these interesting stories about your life. You really ought to sit down and write your story." Well, one of the first ones that I wrote was from the time I got out of the Army, and then went back to work at the mill, and then went to the mill shut down, went to Mexico, met my wife, and so on. I began to realize just how guided my life had been. It was really, truly, it couldn't have happened any other way. Given the circumstances, given my dad's personality, my personality, the fact that my dad helped a woman who happened to know my wife happened to know my wife. And so she asked me one day, says, we're going to go to a New Year's Eve party. You want me to get you a date? And I said, well, I suppose so. This story's not being told exactly right. There's a preamble part to the story where actually the one I took on the first date was my wife's sister, believe it or not. And then she left a couple weeks later, and when the day she left, I met my wife. And then I went home and told my dad. And then after that was the New Year's Eve party. And then, from there, we dated. I went to see her 6 times a week, 7 times a week. I'd go see her. And she worked in a hotel. And I used to she worked at the front desk in a hotel. And I would just go sit up in the front area and just be there all day long while she worked.
Completely in love.
Yeah, well, I was guarding my territory on the one hand, and on the other hand, I was trying to fast track getting to know her enough to know if I wanted to marry her, if I should marry her. And it kept coming up, yes. And so we got married pretty quickly after that. And my best friend, a couple of friends, and one of them's girlfriend and my sister were coming to Mexico to visit. And so I coordinated a wedding to when they were going to be there. And so we got married, and I went home.
That's incredible.
Married, unemployed, and broke.
Unemployed, broke, and now with a wife.
Yeah, now with a wife. Yeah. When I got back to Madison, Wisconsin, I had $65 in my pocket, and that's where we started. We started out living in the basement of my sister's apartment, and I went out the next morning and went looking for ways to make money.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a very similar story on how we found each other with my wife. I've been married to her for 34 years now, and I was on the first year of computer science school, and she shows up, and out of the blue, I just like you said, right? I knew she was the one for me, but I didn't want to accept it. So I kept ignoring her for 6 months until I finally completely fell in love with her. But then she tells me that she had already signed up in another school to do general science. She was not going to be a computer scientist. And listen to this, in the last week, she made up her mind to go and follow the computer science path because her mom told her to do something more specific. So I was within a week for me not to have never met her.
There you go.
Right.
Well, good for you.
Thank you. $65 in your pocket, a brand new life, completely broke. What did you do?
What did I do? Yeah. Well, I was driving back from Mexico, driving a car that belonged to my dad, or actually belonged to the bank. He owed money on the car. So the day after I got back, I drove to the bank and parked the car in the lot and went in and gave them the keys to the car and hitchhiked home. So the only transportation I had at that point was a motorcycle, little Honda 350 motorcycle. And I borrowed $1,100 from my sister. She got that out of the cash value of her life insurance. And I went back to that same town, and there's a reputable guy that sold used cars there. And I bought a 1968 Mercury Cougar, 3-speed on the stick, and it had 42,000 miles on it, which is a lot of miles back in those days. And I drove that car for 80,000 miles. And I mean, it's just an amazing car. It lasted forever. It got 18 miles a gallon back when cars got 12. And wow. So anyway, I went out every day and made a little bit of money doing something every single day. Or I was interviewing for a job, or I just kept, trying to make money. And somebody contacted me and said that they wanted me to fix a saw because I ran a sawmill and I knew how to fix a saw. And there's only one other place in the United States down in Birmingham that could fix it, but I could do it myself. And so the guy paid me $200. I worked 24 straight hours to fix that saw. And then I went to collect my money, and he had left town, and he was out in Mendota, Illinois. So I drove to Mendota, Illinois to collect my money from the guy who was trying to get away from not paying me. And after he paid me, he kind of laughed about me driving over there. But anyway, and he said, he says, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I got to go get a job." And he says, "Can you do that?" And he pointed at somebody running a chainsaw, cutting trees down. And I said, "Sure." I've been doing that for years. And even though I was still pretty young, I was only 24 years old at the time. Anyway, so I worked for him for a while and made $50 a day, which was like union wages, really high wages for the time. I was able to pay my sister back in just a couple of months, and and then we went to Mexico to get my wife's papers straightened out. We came back. I got a job selling life insurance. So I sold life insurance for 14 months and sold quite a bit, actually. They taught me how to do it, and I worked hard and sold a lot of life insurance. And then went to work as a door-to-door salesman for about 3 years, did that, and then I went to work for Pitney Bowes as a salesman. And that's where I learned to do professional selling. And then I did that for 3 years, and by that time I'd been promoted once, was about to be promoted again, and my boss and I had a disagreement on how to run the office. And so after that disagreement, where I thought I was right and he thought he was right, I was the number 3 salesman out of 365 salesmen in the 7-state territory, and he wanted to tell me how to sell, and I didn't think he knew how. So I just said no, thanks, and I went to work for another company, real small little company. I doubled the size of that company in 5 months, but it turns out my the two brothers that owned the company reneged on a warranty claimed by one of my customers, and I couldn't work for anybody who would do that, so I went into business for myself, and so did that for about a year, and then foolishly went back to work for those two guys because they made me an offer of so much money that I just couldn't turn it down. But I had to move to Houston in order to do it. So I moved to Houston, and of course, when people are crooked, they're crooked. So within no time, and within just a few days, I realized I'd made a mistake. But by that time, I'd already sold my house and moved to Houston and bought another house, and so I started another business called U.S. Signs in order to make money and get away from that job. And so within 5 months, I was gone, and I started another company that I kept for 31 years, the company I mentioned before. And I didn't know a damn thing about signs or how to make them or anything else, but we got it off the ground, and we doubled the size of the company every year for 5 years, and we were number 196 in the Inc. 500 back in the era where it was actually 500, not 5,000. And anyway, so we were number 196, and we kept growing the company, and it became one of the top 100 sign companies in the United States before it was over with. And there are 30,000 sign companies in the United States, by the way, just to give you perspective.
Wow. What a life story, right? And I can see the pattern. The pattern is you will never give up. The pattern is you had that confidence that you can figure it out. Because I don't see fear in your story. A lot of people, like if you were to interview me, I will show all kinds of fear in my life. I mean, I was courageous because I was fearful, but still did it. But from your perspective, it feels like you just didn't take no for an answer. You knew you were going to figure it out. Like, who gets married with 65 bucks in their pocket? For example, right? But also, another beautiful pattern that I see is your sales training. Because once you know how to communicate with people, how to offer a good product or service, once you know how to open doors, you can apply that to any business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what was your saving grace? The biggest blessing the Lord has given you is that those guys were crooked. Because if they would have been okay, you would have a completely different lifestyle. Now you run your own businesses, right? Now you're your own boss, and you provide beautiful value, and you are an honest person, and you know how to run companies, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it was really kind of a shame. Even back then, I recognized that I didn't have a burning need to work for myself. And that was not something I said, oh, well, my dad was an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I got to work for myself. I was running my dad's mill the first time when I was 18 years old. He was working in the mill. I was working at the mill at the same time, and he cut his thumb off and a set of gears. And so from that day until he healed up, I ran the mill for several months, and I was only 18. And I went calmly back to work for him when he got back to work, no problem. Went on to school, went on to the Army, got out, went back to work for him again, and immediately took over the mill. And so there's something inside of me that just, I don't mind working for someone who is better than me at what we're doing. That doesn't bother me at all, to take orders or, whatever. When I was in the Army, when the captain said, jump, I'd say how high, no problem. I mean, nothing inside me that I was having to overcome. I had a natural willingness to obey, succumb to superior authority, etc. But if I was more competent than the next guy, I just had a need to take over, and I would. So.
And that's the signs of a true leader, right? And in my life, it was always the case. I always craved that freedom of time, more than freedom of money. I was craving the freedom of time. Being able to set up the schedule the way I see best fit to maximize my outcome. That's what actually did it for me. But I think my experience in corporate, being an employee, it was great. You were an employee for several years too, and I think if you look back, number one, you get trained. They pay you to learn, and you also learn how to communicate with other people. I tried to do my own business right out of college, and I failed miserably. I had to close it down in 2 years. Actually, I was able to sell it, so it was a blessing. I sold it for the amount of money that I owed, so I didn't have to go bankrupt, right? I was just
good for you.
I tell people, instead of an MBA, I ran a business for 2 years that almost got me bankrupt. You know? But then after I went to corporate, I really learned how to talk to people, how to do business. And that's what made me successful after I started 10 years later.
Well, I can go back to exact times in my life when I learned lessons that I used the rest of my life. I'll give you one example. When I was in 4th grade, 5th grade, somewhere in there, 9, 10 years old, we lived in Beaumont, Texas, in an apartment complex where the storage units were just in a common building, and you could see, and it's like chicken wire was all the units were. And so when somebody moved out, you could see what they left behind. And somebody left a bunch of paperback books. And so another kid and I, we went in there, we saw the paperback books. So the gate was open, we could get the books. And I said, I've seen these down at the 7-Eleven. These are current books, so we ought to go out and sell them door to door. And so he said, okay, how much? I said, well, half of the price on the book. That's what we'll sell it for. When we come back, we'll pool our money and we'll split it 50-50. That way we don't have to worry about whether, my books are worth more than yours or yours are worth more than mine, because it'll all be split evenly anyway. So we had an even number of books. I went out and sold my books. He went out and sold his books, came back, and I had several dollars. He had less than $1 all totaled. And I said, sorry, partnership's off. So for the rest of my life, I was not willing to have partners. I never wanted to have partners because I realized, you can't pull at the same rate or contribute at the same rate. And so there were lessons like that in my life. Another one was about, hard work. When I was 14, I went to work for my dad at the mill. And one Friday night, we were driving past the mill, and he looked down there, and his foreman, Joe Ford, was down there using a splitting maul, which is like a big sledgehammer, to split wood. And he just was swinging it for all he's worth. I mean, my goodness, just for all he's worth. And we sat there, and my dad admiringly said, Joe Ford is the hardest working man I've ever seen. And there I was, a 14-year-old boy, and I thought to myself, before I die, my dad is going to say to me, you're the hardest working man I know. And he did. Just believe it or not, only 3 or 4 months before he died, but he finally got around to it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's interesting how we get molded by those moments, those pivotal moments.
It's what a privilege, right? And also having that willingness to keep learning. Regarding the partnership too, I know many companies that have successful partners, but I am in the same boat as you. I tried to have a partner once, and the end result was that he wanted to still have my business, and he left with a $50,000 debt to me. And thank God we never actually put it in writing, right? So we were working out the partnership before we involved lawyers. And I'm like, this is it. I will never, ever try to have another partner again in my life. This is back in 2011.
Yeah.
But the biggest lesson that I learned from that was forgiveness. I was not willing to forgive that guy. I knew I was burning inside. Back in 2011, $50,000 was significant for me. And I was like, I wanted to go and put a knife on his tires or some crazy things like that came through my mind because I was so immature. And then, after prayer and meditation and, asking to God, like, what do I do with this thing? The Lord showed me, you have to forgive. You have to let go.
Yeah. For your sake, by the way, for your sake, not for his sake, for your sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the only one getting eaten up by it. He doesn't care, doesn't know, wouldn't care if he did know.
Ron, I went to my lawyer. This is how I see, like, the Lord puts angels around us, right? The people that believe, that the believers. I went to my lawyer. His business is to serve people like me, to defend people like me. I went and I showed him what the guy did and all the proof, right? So because I wanted to sue him. You know what my lawyer said? He said, David, I'm going to spend $100,000 going after this guy in a lawsuit, and you're going to spend that money on me. Why don't you take that money instead and use it to find other clients and better your business and learn how to have partners in the next time? And I'm like, this was the last thing that the Lord used for me to start forgiving, because not even my lawyer wanted to go after this guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had the same kind of moment. I was in the sign business in the early days. We would sell to absolutely anybody, which meant, of course, we had a lot of collection problems. But we didn't feel like we had the privilege of picking our customers because we were a new company and so on. And I went to a small claims court to try to collect money 60 plus times. I won all of them but two, by the way. And that's when somebody showed up with a witness that was lying. That was a master electrician who said something that wasn't true about electricity and so on. But it doesn't matter. Well, my point is that one of my best friends at the time, still a good friend today, 40 years later, he's my attorney. He was my attorney then. He's retired now. But he said, why don't you spend just a little bit of money, rewrite your contract, and change your attitude? Well, what do you mean? He said, well, first of all, don't do business with somebody if you know damn well that they're not going to pay. That's number one. Number two, rewrite your contract in such a way where it's clearer about what your intent is. And so what we did, we had a one-page contract, and the first half of it was what we'll do for the customer. Here's here's what your sign's going to look like. Here's what how much you're going to pay. Here's how you're going to pay, and so on. And everything below the fold, so to speak, was what we'll do to you, if you don't pay. We'll take your sign down. We'll sue you. You'll have to pay our attorney fees and all this other stuff. And when I would sell, I'd say, okay, here's what we'll do for you. And then I'd say, this is what happens if you don't pay us. I said, do you intend to pay us? And they said, well, of course. And they said, then I don't need to read that part, do I? And if they made me read that part, I wouldn't do business with them. I just simply say, no, if you actually want to know what happens to you if you don't pay, there's some chance you're not going to pay me. I'm not going to do the work. It's just too hard to collect. And then when people would screw me out of money, because they still did occasionally, I never went to court. I let them go. I just never went to court. And I remember one of them, he even admitted that he's trying to screw me. And yet, I told him he's only in his early 40s at the time. And I said, it's probably not a good idea to do that. I said, because everybody who does that to me, something bad happens to them. And I related a couple of stories. A guy lost his business, and another one lost his house, and so on. And I said, something will happen to you. And I said, you just really don't want to do that. I said, I don't think it has anything to do with me. I don't, the universe doesn't revolve around me. But every time somebody does something bad to me like this, something happens. He died.
Wow.
Oh yeah, within 1 year, he died. He had a heart attack and died. Now, why did he die from a heart attack? It's because of the anger or whatever it is that was bothering him that made him act like that. I learned later that he'd lost his 9-year-old daughter to, I don't remember what, for some reason. And I think that was what was killing him. And that's, it wasn't because he didn't pay me. It had nothing to do with it. But he had the opportunity to do something right, not just something good, just something that was right. And he chose not to do it. And so, and since then, I got ripped by a very large company, lighting company actually, that I bought drivers from, and I had a big claim. And so I went to my customers and I said, that I'll make you whole. I'll come outside the warranty. We'll pay for shipping. We'll pay for new product. We'll pay for labor. All kinds of things that are not all that's in my warranty is that we'll give you a replacement product. They have to pay for the freight both ways and so on. But this one was a 7% failure, which is way outside the norm. And so, I stepped up. Well, the company that sold me the driver said they would back me up. And so I thought, okay, well, that's good. So after $500,000 worth of claims, they backed out and they said, no, it's getting to be too much. I'm not going to do it anymore. There was another $1.5 million after that I had to come out of pocket. Oof. But I didn't sue them. I just let it go and we moved on. I talked to a senior VP. He said he thought I was lying about them promising to do that. I sent him the emails. There's a whole bunch of emails that proved that I was right. And they still chose to back out and he wouldn't talk to me anymore. And that's that. I think, okay, fine. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to die with more money than I need anyway. So what do I care? And it gives me a really good story when I'm selling to people, that even when it's, if it's something that I should do, I will do it, even if it's outside the warranty, the written warranty, that is.
And that honor system is what makes you very successful. And even crooked people that tends to they appear to be successful, even though they look like they are wealthy, they are rotten inside and they are not enjoying themselves.
No,
I've seen it one and another time, because they're always thinking of ways of deceiving somebody else and taking advantage. It's almost like a game for them, but at the end of the day, they don't sleep well at night. They don't have a blessing in their life. I'd rather be a poor man with my conscience clean than being a rich person that has all kinds of horrible trauma in their soul.
No. Well, in the first place, you're not going to live. You're cutting years off your life. I had a family member who died prematurely, and that's what I said about her. She was just too angry, and that was what probably caused the disease. Was the dissonance in her body, was causing her to accept the disease. Because we've all got disease in our bodies all the time. We've all got cancer all the time. There's always germs inside of us all the time. So we got to keep our mind straight and our body straight, and keep our attitude straight, and then we'll live as long as we're supposed to, and then we won't be here anymore.
Exactly. What was it like, the process of selling your first business, design business? Was it a painful process? What is that like? Because most companies don't sell. Most companies, they actually they either shut down or they retire or they go bankrupt. But most businesses never sell.
Yeah. Well, I was highly motivated as a seller because I had hired a CEO who came in when the company was just going and blowing, had a really good 5-year plan, and profits were good. We had a great group of customers, big customers. I mean, AMC Theaters I mentioned earlier, but we had Circuit City. We did 100% of Circuit City's signage nationwide. We did 100% of AMC's signage. We did Michael's Arts and Crafts. We did Sally Beauty Supply, Extra Space Storage, Public Storage. We did a lot of really major work around the country. And it was growing. They were growing, so therefore we were growing, and just was a natural consequence of it. What's Nationwide Insurance? We were doing their signage, and so and we had a company that we would shut down between Christmas and New Year's, and for 4 days we would take everybody and their spouses on a vacation. We would pay for it 100%. It's about $1,000 a person that we'd spend on this vacation, going to Cancun or the Riverwalk in San Antonio or San Francisco. We went to very nice vacations, so very family oriented. And the new CEO turned it into this fractionated, politically motivated, you versus the other guy, my faction versus your faction. It just really ruined the culture. And so when I realized that, he ended up quitting. Interestingly, if he ever sees this podcast, he doesn't know this, but I was going to fire him the next day. So he saved me severance pay by quitting on Monday, because I was going to fire him on Tuesday. But anyway, it really ruined the culture of the company. And so I didn't want to go back and rebuild the culture. And so I looked for a buyer. A buyer came along, offered me a price that was about half of what it had been worth, 5 years before, and I took it. And it really wasn't. It was relief for me, because my wife still worked for that company, so she was a chief operating officer, but she wasn't happy, and she was in the middle of all that turmoil. And it was such a good company before too. It was just such a good company. What a shame. But she really wanted the company to sell. But the day after it sold, the separation of what she did and her purpose in life and all that. So it was really, really hard on her for about a year and a half. Really, really hard on her. She recovered in retirement, and she's done real well. And she's a flamenco dancer. She does castanets, and she does French classes, and so on and so forth. So she really has found, her purpose, in retirement. I haven't been. Since we already had this company for 10 years at the time, and this company was just doing, at the time that it sold, I just sold a $26 million deal. I was riding high, and I didn't have any idea of retiring whatsoever. And then of course we had the down, and then we had to back up, and then we had the down during COVID, and now we're on our way back up. And so but I liked doing this. I like the challenge. When we came out the other side of COVID, and let me tell you, that was I mean, that was really, really hard. But I have a good management team. The people we wanted to stay in the company stayed in the company. We didn't lose any of our customers through COVID, but we lost about half our revenue. And so building that back up was really, really hard. But at the end, we look back on this, existential threat that we lived through, and what a blessing it was. Because one more time, we proved that we were good enough. We proved that we could do it. My granddaughter and I, 6 years ago, we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And why do people do stuff like that? It's harder than heck, and it's painful. It tests your endurance. It tests your mental stability. Your claustrophobia. It tests all these things. Why do people do it? Because they want to know if they've got what it takes. So you do things like that. People do the mutter deals and all these other deals, that they do triathletes and so on, do their thing. And why do we do that? So business is like that all the time. It's constantly, challenging you and forcing you to be your best, and making you either be a better leader or a lesser leader, because you can't sit still. A friend of mine used to say, when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you rot. So you got to keep on moving forward to stay green. And so, I just think business is just it's what I was born to do. I love doing it. It is challenging, and when I'm really down as in that I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it financially in the business because of losing half the business like we did from 20 to 20. Well, it was 2020. We lost that much. It was 19 was a record year, and 2020 was supposed to be a record year, and it turned out to be almost a record year for how much we lost. But 2021 was a record year on how much we lost. And then 2022, we were back to being profitable again, and we'll be profitable this year. So anyway, with that said, I love being in business. I don't want to, I like giving employment. I like having people come in and giving them the kind of place that I always wanted to work for. I would have been fine if I had been working for a company like this. I could have worked here my whole life and never had to be the CEO, never had to be the president. All you'd have to do is just respect me, allow me to do what I do in the best way possible, support me, pay me properly, and I would have worked for this company forever.
That's beautiful that you were able to make this beautiful environment for all the people that you hire.
Yeah.
And you're completely right. At some point in life, you have to think, why am I doing what I'm doing? Especially for people like you and I, that we already said financially, you already said you're gonna die with more money than you will ever need. So it's not about the money anymore. It's about making this world a better place through your business, because every soul that comes into your place every morning, they get to have a job and they get to live in an environment what is good, is worth it. And that is not the norm. Most places are a horrible place to go and work.
Yeah.
And it's good because it also gives you purpose. I truly believe when you lose purpose in life, the Lord takes you, because what are you going to be doing hanging around here doing nothing? I mean, I had that problem in 2014. I remember my basic. So usually my business, business is very risky. I've been almost bankrupt 4 times, and up and down. Funny enough, during COVID, so I run a software company, but we're project-based. So we always have to keep the pipeline up and running, because our job is like a construction company, right? You hire a company to make a high-rise building, and then you have to have lined up the other gig. Otherwise, your employees have no work to do. In 2019, talking about problems, right? One of my largest clients defaulted $1 million on us. They just couldn't pay us. And it was supposed to be a very good year, but that this shaking. I owed $300,000 in taxes alone that I didn't have. I didn't have the money to pay, right? So we shrunk down, we got lean, we created this platform that was amazing, a flat platform that other businesses could start their software with. And then COVID hit 6 months later, right? But guess what? We were ready because we had already cut down costs, and we were very lean already because of the problem that we had. So actually 2020 was a pretty good year for us. 2021 was better. 2022 was even better. Now we're in 2023, we're changing things. We're becoming an AI company, and now we're doing this again. but I'm used to it now. Like, I know what to do. I know that we're going to become profitable, and I know that this is my life purpose. So I will do it until the Lord tells me otherwise. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's in the future for you, Ron?
Well, I could answer easily by just saying more of the same, in the sense that we just moved into a new building. We sold the other building that we had, renting this building on a 7-year lease, and our intention is to at least double the size of the company within the next 3 or 4 years. And God willing, I'll use your terminology, God willing, double it again within the next 3 or 4 years after that. This building will support that. We can be 4 times the size in this building. So we're already ready for that kind of growth in terms of the physical. We've got the systems in place already, although we continue to make them better, but we've got it right now. We've got a real-time dashboard, so that we sell something, we get a purchase order, that purchase order in real time is in our dashboard. If we get a reply off of a Google ad, it's in the dashboard. If we ship something, it's in the dashboard. We can tell what's going on at all times. We've got the best management system, best management team that we've ever had. It'll be better in 3 years, but it's still really, really good. It's the best we've ever had. And on top of that, we've got the best project managers, the best labor team, the best warehouse group, the best system. Our systems in our warehouse are, you'd think we're not quite Amazon, but we're really up there with barcode systems, entry and exit, and so on. So doing our inventory is not a big deal. Finding things, shipping things correctly, and so on. And so we've got 6 good salespeople right now. And in the past, I've had more salespeople, but not good ones. I mean, we've had 2 good salespeople, and we've had 8 salespeople, and 2 of them are good, kind of thing. We've had that a lot, but we've had 6 good salespeople right now. All of them know their niche, and they're good at what they're doing. So we can lay on a great deal of revenue on this system, and it will just pump out profit. So we will get repaid for those losses in COVID. As I said before, we didn't lay off a single person during COVID, and we kept them at 100%. And then late in the game in 2021 in October, we finally did a layoff and immediately started hiring back. So the people who performed well, they stayed. The ones who didn't, we I don't know, we furloughed them, we fired them, whatever the right word is there. They laid them off. But anyway, we changed them for other people. So we're about the same count, not quite the same count. We have just a little bit less count now because we're paying better now, and we're hiring a higher class of people. So we don't need as many people today. And our leverage in this company is the reason that we make the money we make. It's not because we market up better than other people or whatever. It's because we get more per employee because we have better systems. They don't have to work any harder than they would for any other company. The difference is that everything they do. I'll give you an example. This is one that's about a year old now, but it was last October. One of our customers gave us a 1,300 location deal. And this is something we've done many times, so this wasn't entirely new, but we finished all those in 4 months, 1,300 locations in just 4 months. We did 2,330 locations in a year for one other customer. These are installations I'm talking about, where we have to go out into a building, take out the old lighting, put in new lighting, and send the invoice. And we had one project manager that was on top of that deal. We had labor people underneath him. I shouldn't say underneath him because they don't work for him. They're a different group in our company. But the labor people did the labor part, and he did the project management part. But most people couldn't imagine that a company our size can have 10 project managers all totaled and do the kind of business we do. It's impossible to do that, but we do it. And my sign company back when was the same way. We did about $500,000 per employee in a business, a sign business, where $135,000 per employee was the normal revenue ratio, and we did 500,000, almost 4x. And so it's the same kind of thing here. We could add $10 million in business and not add 10 employees. We wouldn't even have to add 10 employees, probably 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there.
That's the result of a great culture and a great system, right? Like I always told the people that I teach business, I told them, first and foremost, you need a good culture. And then you need to have systems in place that automate your business so that you can do more with less. So important.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, another thing too is that, our systems are such that now if we hire someone who's been in the business, so we're not teaching them about lighting, but they've been in the business doing it. The last one I remember hiring a young man, the very, very bright young man, in 4 days he was productive. That's just impossible. In 4 days he was doing work at the same level as our experienced people. Because it's just not hard to do it. The way we do it, it's just not that hard to do it and to do it right. But these people work hard too, though. I mean, if you we've got a lot of different time zones, and if somebody sends a text message out or an email message out, at 6:30 at night, sometimes they'll get an answer from one of our people because they got done with dinner and they went back to work, and there they were. I used to send out emails a lot on Sunday nights. It was not uncommon at all for me to get replies on Sunday night. And these people don't get paid, more or less. They like their jobs. They're responsible people. They know their customers, wanting them to perform, and they want to do it for them.
Beautiful. Going back to that beautiful culture,
But there's another piece, David. So what was the blessing out of COVID? The blessing for me out of COVID was not just that we made it through it, and I felt, some pride, satisfaction in that. It was that that we started, I should say, communicating with my people better. So the first 22 days of COVID, I communicated 19 times, either through a video call, a mass mailing of some kind, an email blast or whatever. And then we set up this once a month video call with everybody on the call. And here we are 3 years later, and we're still doing that. It's one of the blessings that came out of it, is because now we have a system where once a month I can talk to everybody in the company, and they seem to want to be on the call. I certainly look forward to the calls when I can talk to them. And one of the things that we talk about, one of the things that I promote all the time is that we all think that we know how the world ought to be better. And yet people in church don't get along with each other. People in the PTO don't get along with each other. Neighbors don't get along with each other. Families don't get along with each other. So guys, if you really think that you know how to do it, let's do it right here. Because we have every flavor of person in the world works for this company. And we have 50 employees, and those 50 are just a cross-section of life. And so if we can figure out how to have a common purpose and work for that common purpose and get along with each other and solve any kind of conflict that we have without having to go to management and broker some kind of relationship fixing or whatever, if we can do that here, then there's some hope for the world. If we can't do that here with 50 people, there is no hope for the world.
Are you still there?
I am. I hit the, can you hear me?
Yeah, everything is good.
Well, when I hit the tabletop, my desktop here, it made the video go off.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so you're right. If you cannot solve it with 50 people, the world has no future.
That's right. The world has no future.
Ron, thank you so much for your time. This hour went by so fast, and I really want to respect your time. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in that billboard?
I'm sorry, say it again?
So imagine you have access to a billboard that is in front of a lot of traffic. What advice would you give in that billboard?
Goodness gracious. This is Tim Ferriss does that with all of his, on his podcast with all of these people he interviews. And I never thought about it. The thing that came to mind is that self-discipline is the answer. The thing that is missing isn't that we don't know the right way to do something. It's that we just won't require of ourselves that we do it. So I think self-discipline is the answer.
Self-discipline.
Self-discipline is the answer.
Yeah. No, that is true for everything. Everything in life is required that. And I think one of the things that helped me in my life, I went to military school for 2 years before doing computer science.
You did what for 3 years?
Military school.
Oh, military school. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it really taught me how to be self-disciplined, I remember when I went into crisis, I went into a big existential crisis in 2013. And what got me out of it was the discipline. Because I said, I don't know what I'm doing in this world, and I need to figure this out. I'm not a good leader. So I did two things. I joined a leadership course, a postgraduate degree in leadership, believe it or not, in 2013. And I started working out. I started going to the gym and I put I was doing 4 hours every single day. And that discipline allowed me to get back into myself and realize that I did have a life purpose.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I basically figured out that all my life problems were done by me. I was always blaming somebody else until I had that year to reflect. I mean, I still had the business, I still was working, but I was losing money all the time. And I'm like, I didn't like anybody and nobody liked me because I had a horrible culture because I wasn't the best person, you know. But it was that discipline that got me through it, you know.
Yeah, it is. Everybody knows how to lose weight. Everybody knows how to eat right. Everybody knows how to exercise. Everybody knows how to show up to work on time. Everybody knows how to clean their car and make their bed. Everybody knows how to do it. So why don't they do it? It's all about self-discipline. It isn't about knowledge. It isn't about motivation. It's about a choice. You make the choice and you do it. And I've been mentoring college students for about 30 years at the entrepreneurship program at University of Houston. And so my mentee was here last night, actually, and we were talking about these things. And I asked him, well, so why don't you do those things that you know? And he says, well, because I don't care enough. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, that's the answer. That's true. That is it. Nothing more, nothing less. And I said, well, if you don't make your bed and you don't clean your car, that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't mean that because I do, I'm a better person. It doesn't mean that at all. I said, but it does mean something. And so figure out what it is that you actually do want to do in life. Are you doing those things? And you don't have to tell me, but tell yourself and then make a decision. And there's two kinds of decisions. You know, when I didn't used to have to watch my weight. Now that I'm 77, I have to watch my weight a little bit. So I weigh myself every morning. I know if I've got a little slack or if I don't have a little slack. But I mean, I keep myself within a 3-pound up and down. I mean, you know, 168 to 169 to 167, right in there. And so 168 this morning. And so when I look at the chips, you know, I go to Papacitos and I look at the chips sitting on the table and I have to make a decision. Am I going to eat the chips or not? Because if I eat one, I'm going to eat the basket. And so, and then when I make the decision, no, I'm not going to eat the chips, I ask myself, so which of those two kinds of decisions is it? The kind I'm going to break or the kind I'm not going to break? Is it the real one or is it that other one? And if it's that other one, you might as well relinquish and reach for the chip right now. If it's the real one, you know, then no problem, because I will keep those. If I actually do that little mental exercise about, is this one where you're going to allow yourself to break it or not? Because there's a place over here, this an Italian restaurant over here that has the best doggone bread in the world. And so I could eat the whole basket of bread, but I want to eat at least one because the bread is just so doggone good. So I have to, before I walk in the restaurant, I have to tell myself, I'm going to eat one piece of bread, or I'm going to eat 2 pieces of bread, whatever it is, but I got to decide before I get there. And I got to get my mindset where it's the real deal. I mean, I'm really actually meaning to keep my promise to myself and not eat more than 1 piece of bread. Because I don't want to look different than I look. I like the way I look in the mirror, so I don't want to look any different than that. And I don't want to have to, you know, get rid of 5 pounds in order to see my abs.
But it goes beyond that, right? It's self-respect. I think self-discipline creates self-respect.
Yeah.
Right? Even if
and vice versa.
It wouldn't make you fat at all, right? If
well,
you said
and vice versa, right, David? And vice versa. Self-respect gives you discipline. Discipline gives you self-respect.
Yeah.
Without one, you don't have the other. Without the other, you don't have that one.
It's amazing.
So I think you got the whole key. Now, see, the billboard just got bigger, but yeah.
Right?
Well, I like it. I like it. Just think about what that billboard now reads. You know, discipline gives you self-respect, and self-respect makes discipline easier.
For sure.
That's a good billboard.
And if people only had that, if they only had that, they would avoid 80% of their problems in their lives.
Absolutely. 80%. And live 10 years longer. And live healthier right up to the day they die.
I'm happy.
I don't want to spend 8 or 10 years dying. I want to die all at once. I want to go, you know, healthy. was talking to my doctor the other day, and he wanted me to go on a statin, and I said I don't want to do it. I don't like the reaction to it, and blah blah blah. And besides, I'm not even convinced that cholesterol is bad for you, and so that's the other problem. But anyway, and I said, by the way, if we pay so much attention to my heart, I'm going to have this great heart when my liver gives out. I'm going to have this great heart when my kidneys give. I know I want the kidneys, the liver, the heart, everything to go at once. I want it to all go at once and die all at once, and that's it. Fall apart, and within 4 days or 4 hours or whatever, I'm gone. And so I want to have balance all the way up to the point I die.
It's beautiful. I read a book a couple of years ago called Younger Next Year.
Yeah.
And it's about that. Like this guy hires a doctor, and they both write this book on how to live your best life health-wise until you die. And he says the people go like this in life, and they go up and then start going down, and then slowly go down until they die, and that's very painful. And he says, what I want to go up and stay flat up, and then the minute that I die, I go all the way down in one shot. Yep. And that's the goal, and that's a beautiful goal. Congratulations. Yep. That's what I want to do.
Me too. I think everybody wants that goal, but people don't act like they want that goal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look down and you can't see your knees or whatever, can't see your feet, there's something wrong. Yeah. Time to take off all your clothes and look at yourself in the mirror. If you're not happy with it, change it. You've got the power, and it's not even hard. So I talk to people about health a lot because I'm self-righteous, maybe, I'm not sure why, but I do it a lot anyway. And I say, how long did it take you to get this size? Years and years and years. So when you decide that you're going to lose that weight, think of it in terms of years. If you reduce your caloric intake by 100 calories a day, just 100 calories less each day, you lose a pound a month. Think about that. That's an apple, by the way, or an orange, or one mixed drink, or one beer. That's 100 calories, so it's not a whole lot. And you do that consistently over the next year. You'll lose 12 pounds this year, 12 pounds next year, 12 pounds the year after that. So in 3 years, you've lost 36 pounds. For most people, that's all you need and more. If it takes 4 years, that's okay. But all you got to do is start to weigh yourself every day. That's all you have to do. And then pay attention. If you're up a pound, you got 2 pounds to lose this month. That pound plus the pound you owe for this month. And then just keep making it ratchet it off. And then I would suggest that right over your scale, you have to write your weight every morning. Put a calendar up there, and every morning you got to write your weight. And if it's not going down, or staying stable, because it virtually stays stable every month. A pound isn't much. Mm-hmm. But here's another one. How many calories are in 1 pound of fat? It's 3,600 calories. 3,600 calories. How many calories does it take to run a marathon? Less than 3,600. Less than that.
Wow.
So you're not going to exercise your way into good weight. The only way you get yourself into good weight is by what you put in your mouth.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
for sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. The exercise part, I think it helps a lot with the brain and actually keeping your joints and your muscles healthy. But when it comes to weight, is you win the battle in the kitchen, not at the gym. That's for sure. Yeah. You know what I used to do, but I went to extreme. I used to do intermittent fasting. So I did that for about 5 years. So I will not eat at all until 3 p.m. And then I will have a window of eating between 3 and 7 p.m. The problem is that I took it to the other side, and last year I got extreme anemia because I wasn't eating enough. So now I do a healthy breakfast, and then I do a healthy dinner. I still skip lunch, but now I have my full calorie intake because it could go bad on the other side too, right?
No. I was having trouble with my muscles being sore when I was doing intermittent fasting. Because I would eat, I'd be done at like 8 o'clock at night, and I wouldn't eat again until about 12:30 the next day. And so that was giving me the time I needed. So that was about 16 hours. So that qualifies for the intermittent fasting. But the trouble was my muscles were sore all the time, just all the time. And so I wouldn't get enough calories. I wouldn't get enough of the right calories apparently. And so anyway, I started putting more protein in my diet. And I got some high protein cereal and some artificial milk that has high protein milk that doesn't spoil very quickly. And so that's what I eat for breakfast, or I go to a hotel and I eat, oatmeal and bacon and berries, that kind of thing. But I eat breakfast every morning. If I don't eat breakfast, I get a little lightheaded late in the day and all that. So I can't do that. So I also cut down from 7 days a week on exercise down to 5. And so I have I recover that way over the weekend. And then I'll get run down because I like exercise and I do a little bit too much of it. And so I notice that when I go on vacation or I go on a business trip and I don't exercise during that time, I come back and my gosh, I get on the stair climber and it's easy again. Well, why is it easy again? Because I'm not all beat up. I'm not all burned down. Yeah. And so I got to give myself an option of not going to the gym for 2 or 3 or 4 days in addition to the weekend so that I can recover so I can go back. But anything past about 4 to 7 days of recovery, and then it's hard to build back up, start losing muscle mass. But
I had that down. I have that down to like optimized. I do every other day. So I lift weights. Let's say I lift weights on Monday, then I do weights on Wednesday, and then I do cardio on Friday, and that's it. And then I recover. Before, when I was younger, like in my 40s, I could lift weights every single day of the week and do cardio every single day of the week, and I will recover. Now I'm like, no, I have to do intervals, otherwise I don't recover.
I do legs Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and upper body Tuesday, Thursday is what I do. And I don't do anything that's real heavy. I mean, the heaviest thing I pick up is when I do a 30 minutes on the stair climber, and then I do some squats with, what would it be, 88 pounds total. And I do 30 squats and I do 20 squats and then I quit and I go do something else. And I do that. And I do about 15 minutes a day. I don't go past an hour, generally speaking. And that's about all I need to do.
And that's why I started the podcast saying that you looked, 15 years younger. Now I know why.
Well, if you cut off my head, I'd look even younger. My body looks much younger than my face.
That's wonderful. Ron, thank you so much for your time. I'm abusing it already. I'm sorry about that. If people would like to get in touch with you or learn about your business and hire your services and your products, where can they find you?
Well, it's usled.com. It's our website, and I am Ron Farmer, so it's rfarmer@usled.com, and be happy to answer anybody's questions or help them with business or anything else. If they need business advice or whatever, I'm open.
Wonderful. Ron, thank you so much, brother.
David,
God bless you, and keep making this world a better place. We need more people like you.
you as well. Thank you, David. It's been a delight. It truly has.
Beautiful. Cheers.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.